this is Bill Kennedy again with the Ardan Labs podcast, and today we have a special guest named Carlisia Thompson. Hey, Carlisia.
Hi, Bill. Hi, everybody.
Hey, I love the t-shirt. If you can't see it on the regular podcast, but she's got a beautiful green t-shirt with a gopher on it. Actually, I've never seen that t-shirt before. Where'd you get that gopher shirt?
I know. This is my favorite, and it's funny because it's my favorite, and I don't remember where it came from. My husband tells me he bought it for me. So.
And nobody remembers, so he gets to claim
he remembers that he bought it for me. He thought it was, I don't know. I have no recollection, but I believe him. No, I don't know where I got it. Like, I don't remember. But it is my favorite, though. I love the color, and anyway.
So to be fair, I think as a disclaimer, Carlisia and I have known each other for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely right. 5 years.
5 years, I think. Yeah. So there are things actually about Carlisia, even though I've known her for about 5 years, that I don't know. And so one of the things, in this podcast, I like to ask people about how they got started and how they've gotten to where they are. And right now, Carlisia, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where you are right now, so when I jump back into the past, they can kind of get a sense of the present.
Yeah, sure thing. So I am working at VMware right now. And I am working on an open source project named Velero. Velero does backup and recovery of Kubernetes clusters. It's a very popular project, and if you're not in that ecosystem, it's the most popular backup and recovery tool for Kubernetes. So we get a lot of visibility because of that. And now, of course, it's backed by VMware, so we have a lot of resources to work with. And Velero was originated at Heptio, which is where I started. And Heptio was bought by VMware a year and a half ago, I think. I have no concept of time anymore. So I was at Heptio, that was bought by VMware, and that's where I am right now. But I think I covered everything.
Yeah. Perfect. And you are, I hate these kind of labels, but you're a back-end engineer. I mean, you're working on the core services for Velero.
Yeah, Velero, I mean, the Velero front, it depends how you define it, because the Velero front end is the CLI. And so I work the front end too, the front end, back end. But it doesn't have a graphical front end, right? It's all on the terminal or script. If you can use interact with it just via commands, basically.
So let's go back at least 5 years. And I remember that when I met you were, and correct me if I'm wrong, a Ruby developer. Tell me about that job when we first met, because you weren't necessarily coding in Go yet, but you were interested in the community. But talk a little bit about what you were doing there as a Ruby developer.
Yes, so I was working at a company that did mobile ads. And so I was developing apps. I don't remember. Oh, gosh. That's why I suck at interview, because I don't remember things.
But was that back-end development too?
Yeah.
Was that back-end stuff, or were you doing front-end Ruby, like Ruby Rails?
I have never been a front-end developer.
Okay.
Because reasons. No, seriously, front-end is really complicated. And I think this is my impression, when I was starting out, that every time I went for a job interview, I'm sidetracking here completely. Is that okay?
Yeah, no. This is, I want to hear your story in your words.
So whenever I went for interviews, at the beginning, I just wanted a job programming. I was like, I want to be a programmer. Please give me a job and pay me. But every time I went for a job, people automatically wanted me to be a front-end developer. I don't know why. But I started noticing that they didn't just want me, if that was it, I would have gone with it and I would have been happy. Thank you very much. But I was noticing that what they thought was front end development also included design. They wanted me to design things, and I don't have that skill. I just don't. If you ask me to do a button, I might know how to do the button, but then how do you decide what color the button should be? I have like it stresses me out. I don't have that aesthetics, your brain, I think, needs to think in a different way, look at the world in a different way. I don't have that. So that made me really move away from that fast because I was not going to put myself in a position that people expected me to design beautiful things and I was going to fail. So with that, I was like really shying away from front end positions. And I guess I was lucky that I was able to. So with that, I'm telling you, I was never a front-end developer. I have managed to never learn JavaScript. Yay me. I know people are going to like, well, you should know as many languages as possible. I don't subscribe to that. Like, you should know more than one language, yes. Like a few, yes. It's really helpful. Do you have to know all of them? No. And I don't like JavaScript. And at any rate, I think if you're a front-end developer, JavaScript is probably going to be on your plate. Long story to say, I have everything I've done was back-end, and there was a funny reason behind it.
Now, was that your first engineering job that when I had met you, or like?
Gosh, no.
Yeah. So this is the interesting stuff for me. So this is the interesting, right? You grew up in Brazil, right? You grew up in Brazil.
Yeah.
And did you go to? These are things I know. Did you go to university in Brazil?
No.
No. So when did you start your desire, your career towards software development, right? Was it in Brazil or was it when you came to the States? Like, I'm really interested how that happened.
So when I was growing up in Brazil, there were no computers anywhere in my radius. But I always heard, computers are the future. I always heard that message, but I hadn't even looked at a computer. So when I went to high school in Brazil, I don't know how to make stories short. I only have one way to tell stories, and it's long, so bear with me. So when I went to high school, I went to high school in Brazil, and all my college and graduate degrees are from the States. So I went to high school at night because there was a program at night. It was an accounting. It was sort of like a trade school. And I just wanted to go to, it wasn't that I wanted to do accounting, it was just that I wanted to go to school at night so I could do an internship during the day. So I worked at a bank as an intern for 2 years. And when that was over and they couldn't extend the internship, I went and did an internship at a petroleum company, this company named Petrobras. At the time, it was a nationalized company. It was the only one that did anything related to petroleum, and there's a lot of petroleum in Brazil. At any rate, when I was there, I worked as a secretary because, of course, where else would they put me? Cute young girl, right? Like where else would they put me? Of course. No, I'm sorry. First, I worked in a team of engineers, like transcribing some stuff, which I thought was really cool because everything they did, I had no idea even existed. And then when that internship was over, they wanted to extend my internship, but I had to transfer to another department. And I said I wanted to go to the IT department because computers, right? It's like I have no clue. I want to learn. I want to know what I can do. I just want to learn. I just want to explore. It wasn't that I really like computers, and that's why. I just didn't know computers at all. I just wanted to learn. So I really advocated, my boss really liked me. I was doing a good job. That's why they wanted to extend the internship. But instead of taking me to the computer department, putting me there, they put me as a secretary to this big shot director, and they just offer like, oh, it's such a great opportunity. I'm like, yeah, thank you. So I was secretary for a while, and did not get to do computers. So that after that, after my internship was completely over there, I worked at a job at a graphics company. Anyway, I was using computers to do like editing. And then right after I came to the US. And I was 19, so I didn't have a college degree. I did not know English. It was a long journey of learning English and getting to, by the time I started taking classes in college, at any rate, it's another really long story. But when I started taking classes in college, I wanted to do everything. I wanted to get a philosophy degree. I wanted to get a marketing degree, a business degree. The actual computer science degree was very intimidating because I didn't feel that I had the solid logic and math, and I was just not. It just looked unattainable for me. So what I did was I got a bachelor's degree in MIS, so a lot of business classes, some like lightweight computers, just like how computers work, no programming. That was my degree. But aside from getting my degree, I did a program that was a certificate, and it was called a CISP, Computer Information Systems Program. It was very much like another minor degree. And in that program, I learned database, design, database, just like designing actual systems, database systems. I had really good teachers in programming, and we had a big project at the end that we had to do everything in glue, use all the classes that we had, everything that we learned, and use it to put together a system. And so I learned a ton, and I was building things, and we were working in teams. When I left, before I even finished my undergrad degree, I got a job as an online marketing manager, whatever. I was like tracking and analyzing online ads.
All right, so you went to university and you got a degree in management information and a side degree.
Which was really hard back then, believe me. We don't even hear that now, but back then it's like, okay, MIS is a good bridge between business and tech. Okay, sorry, I cut you off, but because I was trying to remember the order of things. So when I was doing the marketing ads and in organizing, managing, tracking, analyzing, building things, I felt like I was doing nothing. I felt so demotivated because like, what am I doing? It's like moving one number from here to there, and it just felt very not fulfilling. I missed. Programming is great, either front end, back end, because you build things and you see the results so automatically, so instantaneously. It's like, okay, wow, I built this thing. It's like I can actually even see it. So I missed that, and I said, well, okay, I really want to go into programming. That's what I want to do. If I didn't know for sure before, now I know for sure. But that was when the 2008 timeframe in the market, the tech bubble completely burst. So right before that, I could have gotten any job as a programmer. Like anybody who was breathing could get a job as a programmer, because that's how hot the market was. I'm totally serious. Like I had people calling me all the time, being super annoying, wanting me to go and work as a programmer, because I was on the job market. I had my resume out there with my phone number. So the supply and demand was totally skewed towards for people who wanted to get into tech. But I didn't, because I was like, oh, I want to explore the business side of things. So when I realized, no, I want to be a programmer, the bubble burst, yay, and I could not get a job to save my life programming, right? I did have some interviews, but nobody was going to take someone who didn't have experience or degree related to programming. Even though, yeah, I did some programming, and that was what got me through to interviews, but that wasn't enough. So I decided, well, if I'm really serious about this, I can't magically make job experience appear for me, but I can go and get a degree. So that's what I did. I applied for a graduate program, and I was going to start in January, or start in September. No, I was going to start in January for some reason. I don't know why I didn't start in September. And as soon as I got accepted, I got an internship as a programmer, because I was also out there applying, and so in programming sense.
Wow. Okay. That opens up so many doors that I want to walk through. There's so many doors here I want to walk through. So it seems like for you, traditional education has been that stepping stone that's allowed you to kind of progress in the directions that you've wanted to go in, right? Like, I can't get a job, so I'm going to go back to university. Or I need this, so I'm going to go to university. And you don't necessarily hear people saying that today, right?
Yeah, well, back then, remember, this is 2008. There were no boot camps. It was either and also didn't have to be a graduate degree, right? I could have gotten another bachelor's degree. Some people like to shit on graduate degrees, but it was just like in 2 years' time I can get a degree. That's a degree that I don't have and I need. So for context, back then there were no boot camps. How else was I going to get that experience in credentials, right?
Let me ask you this though, because I think having the graduate degree was a good move because it just shows another level of education, right? But if the boot camps and the infrastructure that we have today existed back then, would you have done that, you think, instead of the graduate degree? And do you think you would have been just as good? Or I feel like the
that's a great
has
question.
A lot more meat.
It's impossible to know, right? It's impossible to know. It's very possible I would have gone for boot camp because graduate degree for me was very intimidating. And I'm telling you, Bill, there were tears. There were tears. I would cry because I would have a test the next day, and I didn't feel prepared. I felt I'm going to fail all this work, all this money, and it was very stressful because I felt very responsible to get good use out of that time and the money, and also I felt like my future hinged on my getting this degree. You put pressure on yourself, right? You have goals and you want to meet them. So there were a lot of tears. Which is to say, it was intimidating, and then it turned out to be, rightly so, it was not easy. So if there had, I perceived the graduate degree to be very rigorous, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared for that, and it turned out like a lot of times I wasn't, and I felt that I wasn't. So if there had been a boot camp, maybe I would have done that instead. It's possible. Now to your other question, which is great. Was it better for me? Did it turn out better to get a graduate degree? Now, knowing what a bootcamp program is, knowing what I know because I've looked at the curriculum, I've interviewed a lot of people who have gone to bootcamp. Bootcamps are great, but for me, having that CS degree gave me a lot more. So it prepared me better for a long-term career. So I'm glad I got that.
Yeah. It's almost sounding like I think you would have maybe at moments would have maybe quit the graduate degree if the boot camp option was potentially there, or you think you're the kind of person I would have finished it?
I wouldn't quit. I don't quit.
You wouldn't quit. Okay.
I don't quit. If I had made a decision, like if I had gone through the mental struggle of like deciding boot camp, master's degree, and I had decided on a master's degree, that was it. I was going to finish it.
Okay. And one, I didn't know, maybe I did, but I don't remember knowing that you had a graduate degree. And maybe it's my age. I mean, I find that impressive, right? Like, I think having that level of education is impressive. I don't have it. I hated school. So once I got my undergraduate degree, the thought of going back was basically no. I just wondered today how many people look at a resume and see boot camp or graduate degree. Like I think, especially the companies that you've worked at, that's probably helped a lot, because on the back end side of the work you were doing, a lot of it was academic, right? I mean, where did you go? What was your progression after that Ruby? Actually, what I really want to explore, because I think there's a lot of people today who want to work in Go, who right now are having a hard time transitioning because they don't have either that Go experience they need, or they don't feel they're ready, right? You're somebody who made that transition from Ruby into back-end development in Go. So let's talk about that, because at some point you're working in that company doing Ruby. And what made you say, I want to work, I want to do the same things I'm doing, but I want to do it in Go? Like, what happened there? And then tell me, what did you do at that point to get that first Go job?
Okay, so you have two questions, two big questions here. So one is why, and the other is how. So two very long stories again. How many hours do we have?
Well, I want you to focus the story on somebody listening to this, kind of in the same place you were, and try to pull in a little bit of, like, not guidance, but maybe your story can help somebody figure out that path that they need, right? So kind of drive the path a little bit in the mindset as you tell the story to help somebody who might be in the same spot.
Yeah, I think knowing the why, your why, right? Not my why. Your why, if you are considering doing anything, is super important. But the why doesn't have to be like a noble cause. The why doesn't have to be because I want to change the world. I want world peace. The why doesn't have to be anything like that at all. But you must have a why. The why might be, I want to make a $20,000 a year extra, and I can do that. I can achieve that if I become a good programmer. That's absolutely fine. Anything, but you must have a why. That's what I think. So my why was, when I was working at that job, I had spent 4 years, 5 years struggling through running my own company. Now, 2 years, the first 2 years were like 24/7. And then after the 2 years, I got completely burned out. And the other 3 years, I sort of like goofed off. Like I didn't want to face reality, because at the end of those 2 years, I should have gotten a job. I just didn't want to face reality that things didn't work out.
Wait, but you were starting this business at the same time you were working full time?
No, different. Okay. No. The business, after those 2 years plus 3 years of 2 years of like denial, then I'm like, oh yeah, I have to get a job. So I got that job. I'm just saying, I was trying to say I should have gotten the job way earlier. Even financially, it was like, okay, we weren't starving or anything, but it would have helped. But I wasn't, we were in denial. I was in total denial, and I was very burnt out. Anyway, but when I was running my company, it was a software company, and we were programming with Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And we were building this really huge software system. I don't want to get into it, doesn't matter for this purpose. The thing is, after 2 years of building that system, which was really big and complex, we had a ton of tests, which were great. We had a culture of everything needed to be tested, which was great. What was not great was that if you wanted to run all the tests, it was a 30-minute thing. You just sat there and, waited. And I'm thinking, as an owner of a business, you feel it. You feel a burn, a, a whole burn in your pocket. You feel it. It's like, oh, it's happening, because the money that's going to those developers is coming from your bank account. And I was just, so it happened as I was interviewing before I got that job. Right before I got that job, when I was interviewing, I was thinking, yeah, let me boot this up, that the app that we were building. Let me boot it up and poke at it, right? Because I was going for Ruby on Rails jobs. I was like, let me poke at this. So if anyone who's worked with Ruby on Rails now or Ruby, if even like 2 weeks go by, you have to update a bunch of gems, and I'm like, okay, this is like, I haven't looked at this for years, and I had to do so many gem updates. It was crazy. So whatever, I don't even know how long. So I went through the whole process of updating that app, bringing it to like, okay, it can run on the computer that I have now, on the operating system that I have now. Everything is up to date. Now I can run. And I ran the tests, and it took 30 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, this is so painful for so many reasons. I mean, as a developer, I don't want to sit there if I want to run all the tests and wait 30 minutes. And as a manager or a business owner, I was like, oh my God, if I have 5 developers and they're doing this a couple times a week, it's like, here, throw my money on the toilet. Like, this is crazy. So that just got me so riled up. I'm saying this because it's relevant. So I go and I get this job, and it's great. People there are great. And then they wanted to get into be very innovative. So, and they had a Go team. They had some part of the system that was done in Go. Obviously, I was not on that team. I was not really I wasn't looking at Go at all. So, but they sent us to the Go conference, the GopherCon, the second one in 2015. They sent the entire Go team, and I was in this new innovation team, which was my boss and me. It was just created. It was supposed to be like the lead team in the company. So we went because, innovation. We went to the conference. It was great. I actually didn't meet you at the conference. We met talking online right after. But so during the conference, I saw a talk by Parse, I think it's Parse. Oh gosh, is this company? Okay. They were bought by Facebook.
Yeah, Parse I think was bought by Facebook.
Parse, yeah. Right? That was so many years ago. And the guy was talking about how they migrated Parse from Ruby on Rails to Go with 4 developers over 2 years. And the test went from, guess what? Really got my attention. 30 minutes or 25 minutes, something in that ballpark, to 4 minutes. And I was like, whoa, I found the Holy Grail. I was like, okay, that's what I want. It's like that, I want that. And I just got in my head that I want that. If you're going to build an app, you have to build an app that is, a big system can run all the tests in 4 minutes. That's what I want to be. I didn't know what the language looks like. I didn't know anything. I was just like, this is where I want to be. I want to move. This is where I am. And it wasn't just my app. Any Ruby on Rails app that was big enough would take that long to run tests. And I just wanted to leave that and move to where an app like that would run tests in 4 minutes. That was it.
No, I'm going to get back to this, but I got a quick question. How long does it take to run all the tests for Velero?
So if we are just running, Velero is not a huge app. Okay, it's not. But if I'm just running tests on the, I had to think because there are 2 ways we run tests. If we're just running on a command line, it would take just go test. Take, I don't know, not even a minute, less than a minute. I haven't ever timed it. It's just super quick. But then another way to run is I'll make files and it'll build an image and then run make targets like formatting and test and building the image. That takes a little bit, and then we have some generated code. So during that build process, we go in the process of removing that generated code, because through the process of testing, it generates the code, and that is the piece that makes it take a long time. Anyway, I really hate it. I hate waiting for tests to run. So that really annoys me, that part, but we're getting rid of it.
All right, so let's get back. So you see this, oh my God, I could get my tests down from 30 minutes to 4 minutes. So you're sold on that talk. So you're still a Ruby developer. You're on an innovation team. You're working with your boss. So you now have to convince him that anything new this innovation team does is now going to be in Go. Like, tell me a little bit about that, because now we're getting close to this transition, right, that you're able to make.
Yeah, so here's my predicament. So my boss was great in the sense that, he was great in the sense that he was a young guy. He would be totally interested in using Go for building apps. He was totally open for that. But it wasn't up to him in a lot of ways. So here's my predicament. I was put in this, I'm doing air quotes here, you people, everyone, is like elite team. And so it had just been formed, with trying to, but like the idea is that we're going to build this team out. So now I'm like, I want to move to the Go team. How do I do that? That story I can cut to the chase. It didn't work out. I tried. I tried my best political moves, which are not great to begin with. I'm like, what do I do? So I talked to my boss. I talked to the lead of the Go team, and basically, none of them had any power to make any decision. The company wanted to have this elite team, build it out, and just taking the one developer from that team and moving, it was just didn't make sense from the perspective of the company. But then it ended up that the developer ended up leaving the team anyway, and the company. Because, I was like, I'm serious about this. That's where I want to be. And that's like where I want to invest my professional time to learn. That's the next learning thing that I want to achieve. And yeah, so on one hand, I'm not super good at waiting, but I should take that back, because it did take me a year. I was doing my work, but I was also on my free time, I was learning Go. I was getting involved in the community. I got involved in Go Bridge, and through doing a lot of things, I learned a lot. And then, so a year later, I did get a job. I was interviewing this whole time. I was trying to get interviews. I did interviews that didn't work out, and then I did an interview that worked out, and it was a really good company. And that's.
So wait, but let me explore that a little bit, because for a year you're coding in Ruby, asking to be put on the team that was using Go, and it's not happening. So you're kind of getting frustrated. But in between that, you're doing side projects, or you're doing anything you can to learn Go. So is that right? Like, when you started interviewing for your first Go job, you didn't have any actual production level experience, right? It was all, what projects, what were you doing in that year that allowed you to be successful in that interview? Because that's interesting to me.
So just to clarify, I didn't keep at it, right? I did what I thought I could do. And once things didn't pan out, and I concluded this is just not going to happen, right? I didn't keep insisting. I didn't keep at it. Like, people didn't change, the strategy of the company didn't change, the teams didn't change. So I went as far as I could go, trying to make the move. Didn't work. So I just, okay. Now my next move is, I would have stayed at the company. I think it worked way better for me to have left, no matter what. but side effect. So in the meantime, I was not working on paid projects or anything. I was just trying to learn on my own. Oh, I did access. What is it called? Like I'm forgetting everything.
Oh, the
Katrina one.
exorcism.io.
Exorcism.io. I was doing some exercises there. That was the Gopher Gala. So I did Gopher Gala, and I was just like any for me having a challenge with a like clear scope, small enough for me to be able to grasp was good for me because okay, I know input output is not a big thing. Even if I fail, if I learn a little bit, it's good. So little bit by little bit, I was learning and I was looking at code all the time. And when I did interviews, I mean the way I'm not very clear how people like beginner programmers go through interviews these days. But once you have some years of experience, you don't really need to know the language you're applying for, right? What you need to show is that you have an interest to learn, you have a why, or at least you're not opposed to learning a new thing. And you have to show that you have the capacity to learn and interest and that motivation to learn. So I had an abundance of motivation because I could just say, I've been to the conference and I've done the Gopher Gala. I had things to show, all of these little things that I've done. I could talk the language. I had the vocabulary. I didn't have the experience, but I was talking to people. I was acquiring the vocabulary. I started following a bunch of people on Twitter. I started understanding what were the strengths and weaknesses of the language, which I could identify because I had been programming for years. So I understand when we look at languages, what we are looking for. So I started learning from that angle, a lot of concepts, a lot of vocabulary, how to talk about it. And you don't need to actually code to understand those things. So, and through doing little things, and also through doing a lot of the interviews had code exercises, right? What is it called? Take home codes.
Oh yeah. When a company asks you to do a small project,
yeah.
take home.
Yeah, I actually really like those. That's also how I got the job. That was my interview process at Hapsio. I had a take home, I did it, and then I talked to a couple people. We went over my implementation. I really like those. So it's not everybody likes it. I understand that. So through going through those code projects, every time I did one, I had to push myself to do something I didn't know how to do. So there's a few more things that I learned, and that was my process.
So this is interesting because what was the company that ended up hiring you for your first Go job?
Fastly.
That was Fastly. So this is interesting because this is the first time I'm hearing from somebody that take-home exercise was really valuable in your ability to get the job because you were able to speak to being an engineer, which is really important in the interview process, right? There was no doubt that you had engineering background and that you've had things in production, and that was huge. But you didn't have a lot of experience in the language yet, but that take-home exercise allowed you to show that you could code and go for them. And without that, maybe you don't necessarily get the job, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but what usually happens with interviews, because I interview a lot as well. So throughout my career, I have always interviewed people. So companies usually either they have a code project or they don't, obviously. So companies who don't have a code project, they tend to explore technical knowledge during the interview. So when there is a code project, that diminishes. And for me, I much rather, like maybe because I'm visual, but I do a lot better if I'm talking about something that I implemented. Not those interviews are not easy, but for me they're much easier than sitting in front of someone and having questions being slinged at me or slung, how do you say it? Being thrown at me, and I don't know what the next question is. Like there is a whole entire huge universe of things that I have to be prepared for. Sometimes I do well and sometimes I do super poorly. I might not even remember what I did. Of course, if I'm interviewing, I would go over my things, but it's hard to remember what you did. And if I'm working on a code project, and then I'm going to have a part of the interview that's going to be, behavior interview and some generally technical things. But as far as the deep tech dive is going to be about the project, about the implementation, how I think through things, the solutions that I implement, the implementations, what I didn't implement also comes into play, right? And it's sort of like if you want to hire someone to write for you, you want to know how they write. I think code projects are great for that because that's what we do day in and day out, write code. So yeah, I want to look at your code.
So it's really interesting. So Fastly gives you your first kind of opportunity as being a full-time Go engineer, right? What was the project that they put you on there?
Yeah, I actually was very lucky. I got to work with great people, very supportive, and I got to work on the TLS team. So Fastly is it's a content delivery network. So one thing that you have to have in a system like that is security, because you have this a tenant system, and you want to make sure that the content for one particular customer is airtight, doesn't leak. But at the same time, you want it to leak. You want it you want the content to be refreshed, but you don't want. It has to be a very controlled flow. You need to have max security because you want to make sure that what you are refreshing is what you want to be refreshed, and everything else gets locked in. Security equals reputation for companies like that. So the TLS is I forgot what TLS means.
Transport layer security?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's 9:30 for me, 9:30
Yeah.
a.m. My brain's still waking up. Anyway, so that is like a critical component of security. And of course, Fastly from the beginning had security. But as you can imagine, they had different iterations of that. So I was coming in on a newly formed team to work on a brand new iteration of that system. So they were going to modernize it using Go. There were parts of it that were in C because some things had to be very, very tiny. As far as like the binary had to be super tiny to work on the edge of things. But so it was super cool and I got to learn work with network things, and it was very fascinating. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot of relevant things that I'm always going to make use of.
So I think you spent like 2 years at Fastly, and you're getting pretty down and deep with the TLS and the networking and caching systems and performance, because performance is important to security. And then you take an opportunity to go to Heptio, which is why you're at VMware, because eventually they acquired them. But I think it's an interesting story on what made you make that decision, because you were happy at Fastly. They were a great company. They were really supporting you. Right? I mean, you had no reason to leave other than why did you go to Heptio?
Yeah, So a lot of things when we make a change, there is either a push or a pull or sometimes both, right? Um, you don't just like wake up and, oh, I'm going to change, usually. So in my case, there were both a push and a pull dynamic that happened at the time. So like we developers, at least some of us are very lucky and maybe even spoiled a little bit that we can just like make a change whenever we feel like it. And I don't want to say that I just like, oh, I woke up and I felt like it. And that wasn't it at all. Like I hope every time I make a move, there is a good reason behind it, especially when you're working with good people. So what happened was the pool side of things. I had people telling me, I'm not going to say like people who are on this call, but some people telling me like Kubernetes is the next thing, super hot, that's where you should be, blah, 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 is the future. And then at the same time, when I was a Fastly, so network, I don't want to discourage anyone not to work with network, but network, the technologies behind networking, they are very ancient. They've been established. Thank you, Bill. You're so diplomatic. They're very established. They've been around for a long time. So there are people in the market doing this work. I will never come to their like anywhere near them. Like for me to be an expert, I don't know. Like I could work for 10 years. I will still not be anywhere near as an expert in networking as a lot of people who are in that field, especially because like everyone knew, like I think they could recite RFCs, seriously. Like when you're working with technologies that are implemented based on RFCs, and what you get yourself into is, well, this library implements the IRC, this RFC but it has this exception, that exception, that exception. And this other library implements the same RFC, but it has, and people just know that shit. I'm like, how many decades for me to like memorize this? Because once you know, then you know what to use. And you're just like, it's like talking a foreign language. And it was like, oh my gosh, I have to read and then I have to match, like pattern match things. And I don't know. I just felt, okay, it's really like.
I'm getting the impression
it was unattainable for me to be like the go-to professional in that area. You know what I mean? I also I was working with some amazing. Amazing experienced people, which it's good, but it's like sometimes discouraging. I don't want to be that person, but it was just like, okay, it wasn't that alone. But then, I have the pull factor here, Kubernetes, and it's sort of like when you join a new cutting edge technology, it's sort of like joining, something new, and then you have a chance to reinvent what role you want to play in that. And that is to my personality, okay, it's very appealing. Now, do I want to go and jump in and just work anywhere? Maybe. But at the time, Hapsio was like, if it had some great people. It had Brian Lyles, it had Dave Cheney, it had Kevin Stewart, who I have not met before. I met him at GopherCon actually, and he seemed like a really stand-up guy. And when I went to interview and I talked to Joe Beta and Greg, I can't pronounce his last name. Those guys are so smart. I'm not kidding. It's like, you want to be near people like that because it's like in close, like you have the opportunity to be in close proximity to people like that. If you have that chance, take it. So that's, I was lucky that I had a very good interview process, and the history now.
So I think with the 10 minutes that we have left, I want to explore just a couple more things here. How much of the so from the time you're at Fastly, from the time that you end up at Heptio, right? You're getting more and more involved in the Go community, and I just want to I like exploring that with people because I would say that a majority of the people that I would call friends are people that I've actively participated in community with, right? So for those people who are maybe at the beginning of your journey or maybe somewhere in the middle, and I had this conversation with Andy, right? Like, how important do you think it is to get involved in community and to create a network of relationships? Not everybody's capable of doing that, right? You have a very outgoing personality. I always feel it's important because it can help you with that next opportunity, especially if suddenly you need it because your company's decided to start laying off, which we're seeing right now, right? But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, in the last 10 minutes we have, how you got engaged, how important you think that is, and maybe what people could do who are hesitant to do it. Maybe it's not important at all. So just some thoughts.
So I'll talk a little bit in like specifics and mostly in abstract, so people can maybe relate. It's really hard to talk, like, what does getting involved with community even mean? Like, you join a forum and that's it? Like, what does that mean, right? What's the action item for that? It's like, what's the actual prescription? It's like, just get involved. That is so vague. I don't even know what that means. But this is what it meant for me when I did get involved. So when I joined, going back a little bit, when I joined the Ruby on Rails community, when I was starting to learn, frankly, I was having my second kid. I was actually pregnant when I started learning. Is that true, or is it my first kid? I don't know. So I have 2 kids, and my memory obviously it doesn't work. At any rate, I was going to Rails Bridge events. People were volunteering to teach workshops like that. And I always had a passion because I learned a lot and I met people. And it really, really helped me. I had a place to go and take a course for free, like a whole weekend, and with people who had the same interests as me. And I got to meet the people in my local community who are doing the same things that I wanted to do, working professionally, or were learning, or were going in that direction. So I met so many people, and it paid off so much. And all of the meetups, and I always had a passion of, wow, I want to help too. But I had like babies. It was not a moment for me to do that. I just was not able to do all of it, right? But I always had it in the back of my mind. So when I came to the Go community, my kids were, big enough, and I felt that I had the bandwidth. So I'm like, this is my time. I want to help. So when you said that you wanted to start GoBridge, I was like, wow, I couldn't do it then, but I get to do it now. And it's brand new. I love doing brand new projects. I love starting projects and carrying them on to like they are self-sufficient. I love that potential. So because you were asking for help, and I said I want to help, and then you said, oh yeah, I want to do GoBridge. I'm like, coming in. So what I think really makes a difference if you can show up with the intention to help. And it's very like messy because there is no straight line between like, oh, I'll help over here and I'll get helped over there. How do these things work? I don't know. I just know that every time I showed up to help, somehow down the line, I got back tons more in return. Maybe like, oh, I helped someone, and then like 3 years later, I want to interview people for a position, and someone I met, oh, I get to I can entice that person to come and interview with me because we met in a community setting where I was an active participant.
I love it.
Yeah, that's like the abstract way of saying there is no really clear line, like a payoff that I can say you're going to get. But if you just try to help in any way, shape, or form, anywhere, I don't know. That's how it works for me. Like when I'm helpful, with things just pop up. I don't know.
All right, all right. Yeah, no, I agree. And there are people who are introverted and it's hard, but I think meetups are a great place to start. Your local meetups are a great place to start and then kind of expand. All right, we got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, so I just want to, sorry. So you can show up to a meetup and be like an assistant, like just like the go-get person. That's helping. You don't have to be an extrovert to like be the person who goes and gets bottles of water. You know what I mean? It's like you have to like just think through things like how can I help in a way that is comfortable for me, but it's still helpful. Anyway.
I agree. And that meetup, I've always found, can become a family too. Can become a second family. I love the meetups. Even virtually, that's working. All right, with the last few minutes we have, a big part of this podcast is hearing people's stories from kind of where they started to where they are, with the hope that people, wherever they are in their journey or their story, can kind of maybe relate and get an idea of what their next step is. So we went through that with you. All right, and I love your story. But is there anything in the last couple of minutes that maybe somebody should hear that we didn't talk about that could help them with their journey that they're going through right now? You think there's anything, any advice,
Sure.
any thoughts?
Yeah, so something that occurs to me is programming, like if you haven't been doing it for some time, or if you're just getting into it. I think people who have been doing programming, they sort of know the way of the land. They can get themselves another job. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's helpful to hear stories from someone who has done a crossover to a different language, but it's much harder for a complete beginner. So what I would say is programming is not easy, duh, but can be very rewarding. What I think is that if you don't love it, it's going to be very hard for you to stick with it. So find ways to love it. Like if you're attracted to it but you can't verbalize why, you got it. You just don't know what it is, but you being conscientious of what that is really going to help you. Just try to find out what it is that attracts you to programming, get good at it, and that is going to carry you through almost everything. That's going to carry through all the difficulties, like when the test is not working and when you don't understand, that you're going to have that inside you. You are not even going to be thinking about it consciously all the time, but you're just going to have it in you to keep going. So just find what you love about programming. I think it's really important.
That's awesome. All right, that's really good advice. I think a lot of the people that I know who are successful have that love and passion for it. So, and finding what tech you want to work on is also important.
Yeah, a lot of people say, you don't need to have a passion for programming, and I think it's semantics. Sometimes people are really talking about semantics. Yeah, you don't have to like, oh my gosh, I will, my deathbed, I will regret not having added an extra line of code. That's not it. It's just like, well, hopefully you have some attraction. It might be like the people you work with. You just like working with that people who think in terms of engineering and programming. You like working with that kind of people, and that's it. It doesn't have to be that, oh, I'm passionate about building online marketing systems. It doesn't have to be things like that. Just like find something you love about it and articulate it in your head. And just make sure you keep that in mind. Bring it up once in a while, because otherwise, when you find yourself not having the stamina to sit there and look through all the error messages in your brain, you're just not with it, it's because you lost your why. Find it or re-find it.
Awesome. Carlisia, thank you so much for giving us this hour and telling us your story. I love the story. I love where you're at. Yeah, and this is Bill Kennedy with the Ardan Labs podcast, and make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you very soon.